going on in the pool stages? Yes, we're going to be talking basically Rugby World Cup all over again, more and more and more of it. And as we're at the end of the pool stages, we thought we'd have a look back and see what had been happening, not game by game, but kind of your favourite moments and all of that kind of stuff. And when I say we, that's because John O'Connor's joining me. How you doing, sir?
Good day, mate. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. So, before we actually get onto all of that, though, I would like to say a big thank you to a certain Willie Smith, who has become the latest Patreon or supporter of DrivingMaul. He decided to get in at the coffee level of $5 a month. So, thank you very much, cool. Willie, for becoming a supporter of DrivingMaul, and hopefully you'll watch it.
Good on you, Willie.
Yep. So yes, thank you to him. Also, another thing that was really nice was something on YouTube where I'd put up an interview that I'd had with Ben Herring, who is the head coach for Otago, and Jeff commented, having watched so-called professional journalists interview leading rugby coaches at the Rugby World Cup, it's refreshing to see a chap ask an interview with genuine enthusiasm, insight and intelligence regards the local competition. So, thanks.
Did you do that interview, Paul?
Sorry?
Did you do that interview?
Yes, I showed it to you the other day. This is quite on YouTube about my interview. Jeez. Oh.
Sorry, of course you did that interview. It's just this comment about enthusiasm, yes, insight and intelligence, and I was going,
oh, dear.
Yes, of course. That's well done, mate.
Oh, dear. All these lovely comments. There is space down below in the comments section for all of your hate comments about John and all your love comments about me. It's all out. So, yeah, looking forward to reading those later. So, John. We're going to have a chat about the Rugby World Cup pool stages. So, what's been your favourite moment of the pool stages so far?
Well, I think the most enjoyable moments has got to be between the win again. They're both Japan rugby team moments. Either the win against Ireland or this winning against Scotland. The Scotland game for me, definitely the best game of the tournament so far, and the best game, at least we know, of the round robin of the pool games. I'm mixing up my analogies here, of the pool games, and they left it the best for last, but there also was such joy in that victory over Ireland as well. So I would say it's between those two for me.
In those two, other ones has got to be the Namibian post-match interview, where he just shows the emotion of beating Fiji. That was just a massive. Uruguay interview, not
Uruguay.
The Uruguay post-match interview.
Good. You gave me such a surprise. I dropped the screen.
That was a wonderful moment from that, showing all of that. Yeah, so all the emotion and what it meant and how much effort they put into that one game was fantastic. Alex agrees with you. Well, he went with Japan beating Ireland was his favourite moment of it. Christopher also, Japan, Ireland, and Fiji, Uruguay, Fiji were great moments. But I'd love to also hear your moments of your favourite tweet or your favourite thing you've seen players doing, and actually also the one you've hated the most. What's been the most annoying thing you've seen on Twitter? Because one of the ones I found annoying has got to have been the World Rugby's continuous respect videos and comments of just because a player shakes another player's hand. It's kind of, guys, just... I know we talk about the rugby values, but let's not get too carried away or too up our own backsides about some of it sometimes.
I think it's easy to forget that is the standard fare in rugby, right? That's what's happening at club games, at school games, but especially I would say in the heart of rugby, which is in the clubs. That's what's happening every week around the world, wherever the rugby season is on, is we 7 kinds of snot out of each other, and then we embrace and go and have a beer, you know.
I think we need to drill down this figure. So what are the 7 kinds of snot? The we've got green snot, red snot. I've got those two.
I'm sorry, snot.
Oh, dearie.
That was so sore, snot. There's the she's never coming back, snot.
Oh yeah. Oh. Dear me.
There's and then of course there's the saddest snot of all.
I dropped the ball snot.
I support England snot.
Oh, dear me. We might have to put you on a 5-minute timeout for that one. Charlene's found the Japanese team trying to get through the pond of water to get to do their captain's run was hilarious. I obviously sad at the same time, but you had all these players trying to tiptoe their way and then you had Leach just running straight through it, splashing. It's kind of like, yep, that's how you get through the water. Oh, dear me. Yeah, Chris makes a good point that World Rugby's social media is not made for rugby fans, but more the casual viewers, parents, and people new to the sport. That is true. That is true. Jordan Clark. Oh, TJ Perenara's try. That was brilliant. That try. It was great to see TJ Perenara.
Oh yeah, that was extraordinary.
When he was playing at first 5/8, he wasn't even playing at halfback either, which was great.
Yeah, no, wasn't he playing on the wing?
I thought he came on for Geordie Barrett and then played at first 5/8, and you had and we had Webber at 9. I
stand corrected. I thought he was playing on the wing. Hence the reason why he was in that position. But be that as it may,
he was playing out of position anyway. Yep.
It's another indicator of what we were talking about when we spoke about the difference between somebody like Scotland, who plays a wonderful brand of rugby, versus a team like New Zealand, who plays that same rugby that served as the inspiration for that brand, but yet couples that with athletes. So here you have Perenara, who is halfback, who's able to not only have those skills, but also the speed to play in that wide channel. And that's the real difference, is when you not only have a great game plan, and you have a team that can execute at least the plan so far as skills are concerned, but you also have the athletes to be able to execute in terms of speed, agility, strength, winning contact, all of those kind of things.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, Japan walking through water to train and Scotland sitting back threatening lawsuits shows the mindset of who was truly up for the game. I think there's been an awful lot of things being said over the last week where basically journos have heard a rumour from somebody. Now, who that's from is anybody's guess. Kind of actually what really is going on is I think it can be totally different. So, did New Zealand say we don't want to delay our game in case of a shorter turnaround for semi-finals? Well, according to social media, yes. According to World Rugby, no. Ireland are in the process of thinking about suing Stephen Jones, who writes for the Times, about something he wrote in the Sunday Times, because apparently it's absolute rubbish. So there's a lot of I don't know how much of these things really are really are going on. How much is just I need to fill newspaper space, so I'll write it.
I think it's really important for us to educate the viewers and the listeners who are big rugby fans about how this media engine works. You've got guys who are employed to produce copy. They need to fill a certain amount of centimeters of print space in the few newspapers that still produce printed editions, or a certain amount of articles to go online on a website. And the key is clicks.
Yeah, so I generate clicks.
That's it. So I used to write a series called The View from the Couch for Rugby 365. So it was a weekly discussion piece, and this is how I learned. I didn't have formal journalistic training, but this is how I learned. And my editor was a hard-nosed, old-school journalist from way back that had done the beat work and all that kind of thing, and now was editor of Rugby 365. And when I say, I mean, he looked like a journalist. You could just see him, propping up the end of a bar with a pint and a ciggy trailing out his corner of his mouth, right? He looked like he'd been through the ringer at times. Well, I suppose you can't be. If you've dealt with some of the administrators in South African sport, then you can't blame them.
Any sport,
but
not just that.
So you write a column, or you write, especially the guys who are in the beat work, the guys who are doing the daily grind of producing articles. They are looking for clicks. They are looking for, and to be fair to them, they don't always write well. They very seldom write the headline. You can make a suggestion to the editor or the copy editor, and maybe your suggestion is taken. But generally, you can write your piece, and you've got no control over what the headline is. And the headline is supposed to draw you in and make you click, to make you bite. Because especially in the web world, which is where most of course, our viewers at the moment will be based, you're looking to generate traffic. And the more traffic you have through your site and through your column, and hence your site, the more your advertisers will pay. So you either write something, and now I'm generalizing now, there's different models, but you're looking for traffic. It's just like you would be, and let's be honest, this is not new. I mean, sensational headlines as you're driving past on the side of the traffic lights, there's a sensational headline prompting you to buy from the old school news seller, right? The old paper boy, whatever it was. It's just the same idea. But the idea being that they're trying to draw you in. And now they are in this. When I say they, let's step back and say we as the rugby fans are in a heightened state of frenzy because it's World Cup time. And we're looking for content. We're looking for things to read. More so than, let's say, the general rugby season in the middle of Super Rugby. We're interested, but not like now. And so they're looking to produce content all the time. And something that can possibly spark controversy, like Ireland threatens to sue IRB, right? Beautiful headline, clickbait, and people are in. The sad thing is that the old school, and I'm speaking now as somebody who hasn't done journalism training, but I know the principles, the old school about having a backup source. So even if you've got a confidential source, following that up, right, and making sure you either have a second source or that you have a second source and then you present a right of reply to, for instance, before you publish that, you get hold of the Ireland Rugby Board or their spokesman or their media and say, do you have a response? We're going to print this. That's just gone by the wayside, right? Yeah. Because it's no longer about being right, it's about being first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, the internet has sped up that process. You don't have several hours until publishing deadline for which to check all that kind of stuff. You have seconds to click. And I'll be honest, that's what I've jumped on that to a certain degree myself. So hence we do the post game reactions literally as the whistle goes. I don't wait, sit down, rewatch the game, write notes, like some
Yeah.
of the other people do, because hey, that means I'm first out there.
Yeah.
And hence I do call it a reaction rather
Now,
than a review show.
And if we work together, I have to hold Paul back and say, please, can we at least see the post-match interview? Because he is all ready to start live streaming, like the final whistle goes, you know? He's constantly pressing update on Spark Sports, a lagging coverage, right, to make sure we're as close as possible. And he would be on within a minute of the final whistle. Now, I keep on saying, I'd just like to see what the captain say, please, you know? So, yes, you're 100% right, mate. It's about
it is about being first.
Now.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I wouldn't believe everything that's written or everything that's said either. Ollie Brown kicks it off some of the standout players. He mentions Semi Radradra for Fiji, who has has been playing absolutely wonderfully. Christopher Edwards-Bay, George Ford. Yes, George Ford has been playing well, but he's a player who does play well and looks good behind a pack that's going forwards. Now England are going to be starting playing some more serious games. Let's see how good George Ford is. It's just from here on in.
What if we do this? What if we pose a question, and in the last 5-10 minutes we can address who's been player of the tournament
You want
so far?
to leave it till then? Okay.
Yeah. So
we've got lots of suggestions already in the chat.
Yeah. Send in your thoughts, and if you can help us out, send in not only your nominations but also why you think. So send in who you think has been the player of the tournament so far, and why. I know it's difficult. Try to take off your team's coloured underpants that you're wearing. I suspect that Paul has been in tighty whities for the last month, right? But yeah, try and look at the game from the perspective of who. Let's give some points. Who has startled you? Who has made you go wow? Who has stood head and shoulders above everybody else?
Yep, we've got quite a big list here of those. If you
yeah. So when you say who is somebody that you saw and you thought that is special, right? That I would pay money to see, right? That player just brings me joy to watch him play.
Cool. So yeah, we'll crack through those we'll do it in about 10 minutes. So you time to write those in, and we'll come back to that. One of the someone also mentioned that actually one of their highlights has been Chekhov's meltdowns in his post-match interviews. Now, to me, I really despise that. I find that brings actually the game into disrepute. So I'm not a fan of coaches having to go at refs post-game. Where do you stand on Chekhov's post-match reviews? Good or bad?
I'm not a fan. Right. I think that it's valuable for a team to have a coach that is calm. Right. A coach that is reasoned and a coach that is analytical. I have met Heineke Meyer. I've chatted to him on the sidelines of a high school game while he was watching his son. I took my son over, wanted to meet him, and we wished him well. He's a very nice man. By all accounts, people who've worked with him and have been in organizations for some length of time where he has set them up and instilled a culture there. He does wonderful things. He creates a rugby family of support. I know a friend of mine, Warren Brosnan, played for him at the tail end of Warren's career and said that when they lost, they would all get a text on the Sunday night after losing, telling them that although it's not nice to win, that they were still valued and it's not the end of the world, and we'll work on this, we'll get better. They had a scripture there talking about the value of people, from the Bible, and saying you're cared for, you're not just cared for when you win. So by all accounts, a really good guy. But I don't think it's helpful to see your coach going bananas, right?
No.
And I was worried sometimes with Hanneke Meyer that he was going to, burst a valve in the in the coach's box with that. I thought there's a gasket that's going to blow here any second, right? And you know what? When a coach is like that, and the time comes where a team needs a rev, it's far more effective. When they see that you're angry, but you're not angry all the time, I think that's where it's effective, right? You need to be calm. And the other thing that strikes me about Checker is it seems to me to be deflection. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of accepting responsibility for what my team does and what my coaching staff and I have done or not done in order to win this game.
Now, deflection can be a good thing, and Eddie Jones is a master at deflecting pressure away from his players and setting the news story.
No,
but the way he does it, the way he does it is to talk about something else in a way that the journalists will write about it. It's not about blasting or shouting or blaming somebody else. It's about saying something controversial, but not nasty.
There's two things that make Eddie Jones special in what you're talking about. One is that he's wry. It's like done in a sort of like very dry sense of humor, like not in a wink, kind of. It's done with some intelligence and humor. But most importantly, he's doing it to deflect pressure off his players. The thing that strikes me about Checker is it appears to be deflecting pressure off himself.
Yep. A couple of comments in here. Steve Hansen and Heineken Meyer apparently are great friends, which is interesting to hear.
Yes. You may not be aware of that, but when Heineken Meyer took over, there was already, for many decades, there'd been a lot of respect between the All Blacks and the Springboks, but it went to another level after Heineken Meyer took over, and it was driven in large part by Heineken Meyer wanting to foster a sense of appreciation and respect between the two teams. And that's been there a long time, normally around certain players. Like Skalkberger was immensely popular with most teams that he played with, but he and, help me out here, the really good blindside flank who tragically died in a car accident in France.
I know who you mean. It'll come to me in a second.
Yes.
Michael Jones.
Right.
Not Michael Jones? No. Yes.
No, it'll come to me.
No.
He often had his hair bleached. Anyway, I think he was Tongan from background. Anyway, they were great mates. And after, again, knocking 7 kinds of snot out of each other, Jake White wrote in his book there'd be a knock at the door of the change room, and it would be him, this All Black, standing outside saying, "Is Skulk ready to go?" Because they're going out for a beer together. So it was there, but as a team and as an organization, as a coaching staff, it was really fostered between Heineken Meyer and Steve Hansen.
Jerry Collins is obviously who you were talking about.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan, for that.
Thank you,
And
Jordan.
also the other point, Charlene says, that against it's what Steve Hansen used against Russia at halftime. Again, he doesn't use it often, and the players actually came out and said, yes, it was an old school roasting, and it was like, okay, yep, it's something he pulls out of the locker occasionally when he needs it, unlike being the standard.
Every week or even every third week, it doesn't have the impact.
No,
right?
So one of the things that we're going to come across, I put a tweet out about this. In 3 weeks' time, we're basically going to see an end of an era for international rugby. We have three coaches who are all going to stop being head coaches, who have pretty much between them have been sort of some of the best coaches over the last decade in international rugby, and help define it. So we've got Steve Hansen. Obviously, we'll finish up. We've got Warren with the All Blacks. We've got Warren Gatland, who'll be finishing up with Wales, and then we've got Schmidt. Not Schmidt.
Schmidt, yes.
Yeah, Schmidt with Ireland, who's finishing up. 3 guys who have taken their teams. All 3. No, it's no coincidence that those 3 teams have all been ranked number 1 in the last couple of months in the world, because, as I say, these are guys who over the last 8 to 10 years, and depending which one you talk, or 8 to 12 years, depending which one you're talking about, as to how long they've been there, have been at the top of their game, and so. And if you look at all those 3, they're not ones that are shouting all the time and losing their cool. They're all guys who keep their cool, know how to press different buttons when they're required, the international rugby is going to have a hole in it for a while, as the kind of the mantle of those 3 guys is replaced, because I say they have been 3 of the top coaches for the last decade.
And I mean, Gatland, I think, can get quite fiery, but he seems to have actually calmed down over the years. He's got calmer and calmer. But if you think how long he's been, 10 years with Wales?
12.
12?
Yeah.
12 years. If you think that Hansen has been with the All Blacks, first as an assistant, he's been with them since 2004. It's 15, it'll be 16 seasons, right, that he's been with them. Schmidt has been 8 years, right?
I think Schmidt's 8 years, yep.
Yes. These are extraordinarily long periods, right? I think Jake White's 2004 to 2007, those 4 years, 4 seasons, was the first time since South Africa's return in 91, 92, the first time that they had somebody longer than 2 years as the coach. Right? So that was 4. And so here we're talking about guys with 8, 12, 15 years worth of involvement at coaching level, 16 years worth of involvement. Now I'm going to bang a drum that I started banging a week ago. They're all Kiwis. Right?
They are, yep.
They're all Kiwis.
But I mean, also, if you look at if we go around the other countries, England, they change their coach every 4 years, pretty much. We've seen Scotland do something pretty similar with Vern Cotter, and Townsend's been in there for 4 years. France, well, they turn over more frequently than that. Australia, again, it's pretty much one World Cup cycle. Sure, Checker's got 1 extra year in there. All these other countries, you get 1 cycle if you're lucky, if you're doing well. Whereas the truly successful ones are given 2-3 cycles.
But let's be honest, all 3 of these guys that have had these multiple cycles are Kiwi coaches, and they've had success. And the drum that I'm going to bang again is that I firmly believe the best thing for the game was that New Zealand won in 2011 and New Zealand won in 2015. Taking the 2011 final out of the picture, because I think as well as France played out of their skins in that 2011 final, and as brilliant as Dusatois was, I think he's criminally underrated as a player. I think he should be valued as one of the great flankers in the history of rugby, right? As great as France was, I think New Zealand in that final had terrible nerves, and they didn't play to their normal potential because of sheer nerves and the weight of expectation. So taking that final out, that 8-5 win out of the reckoning, look at the rest of the tournament in 2011, look especially in 2015, at the style of rugby that was played. And New Zealand have smashed the idea that World Cups are won primarily on defense, limiting mistakes, kicking for territory, and taking penalties or drop goals. They've smashed that idea, right? Now if you see, countries have embraced the New Zealand style of play. Now, where the problem is that New Zealand is always moving. So I heard a great interview with Wayne Smith, probably 3 years ago. It's the best interview with a coach I've ever heard, where he said in this extended interview that...
Even better than my one with Ben Herrick.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't heard that one yet. The best long-form interview, let's put it that way. And what he said at one point, the thing that stuck with me, is he said that the New Zealand coaching staff, the All Black coaching staff, project how they believe rugby is going to be played in 4 years' time. They project how they think the rules will be adjusted. They project how they believe the game will be ref in 4 years' time. And they are preparing their players now. And when I say their players, I'm sure this filters all the way through Super Rugby because they liaise with all the coaches. They are preparing their players for the way they believe rugby will be played and the way the rules will be structured in 4 years' time. So New Zealand is always, and plus on top of that, they are looking every year for every player in every position and every facet of the game to improve by 2 to 3%. So they're looking at these small incremental gains in each player's performance, in each area of each player's performance, and in scrums, that their scrums gets 2 to 3% better every year. So they are moving. So if you want to catch New Zealand, I'm talking overall time. Everybody loses a game now and then, right? Everybody does. Real Madrid does, Barcelona. Everybody loses a game every year.
New Zealand have, the All Blacks definitely for the past, definitely since professionalism really, have been setting the standard for everyone else. Now, occasionally there have been other teams that have stepped up. You got the Springboks in 2007, you got England in 2003, but over the whole, they've been setting the standard.
Yes, there's little windows of excellence, right? And even if you go back the previous 100 years, the things that people don't remember is that New Zealand had an overwhelming win record against England, Australia, France, Scotland, Wales, an incredible win record over them in the previous century as well, right? The only one they didn't was against the Springboks, and they have just left the Springboks in the dust since professionalism. So it's one thing to say we want to catch up to them. You need to aim past them, but that's a whole nother discussion. But the point being is what they did for the game that was so great is they showed that playing into space, because it's not just about playing ball and hand rugby, it's about playing into space. People underestimate how much New Zealand are prepared to kick. New Zealand will move the ball to where there is space. If you pressurize them,
and that's what this is something we were talking about at the weekend after the Scotland-Japan game. Was again, Japan are trying to play for space, not play for contact, which is great to see.
And really,
but I have a question for you.
What happened on? Sure.
What makes France the odd one out of the 8 teams in the quarterfinals?
I could just go. They are French.
So
they speak another language, and they
who's coaching Wales?
They look human.
Who's coaching Wales? So Wales, we've got Gatland, right? Ireland, we've got Schmidt. Obviously, New Zealand, we've got Hansen. England, you've got Eddie Jones. South Africa, you've got Rassie Rasmussen. For Japan, you've got Joseph. And who's the other team that's there? Gone blank. Who's the... Australia, you've got Checker.
Yes.
All of those coaches are from the Southern Hemisphere. France are the only team with a Northern Hemisphere coach. Thanks, Jordan Clark. Thank you for that. That's it. But that's
various to Jordan.
So that that's the again. It tells you all about that trying to catch up, trying to use those ideas. We're seeing that.
This is not palatable. I'm sorry, but it's truth. Sometimes it's the truth that sets us free. Yeah? That the style of rugby that is played in the Northern Hemisphere is not as enjoyable to watch as the style of rugby played on hemisphere. No matter how much Stephen Jones likes to write his columns, no matter what he says, it's not as enjoyable. That doesn't mean the fans aren't fantastic. It doesn't mean that the atmosphere at a Six Nations game is not terrific and the singing is not breathtaking. But the style of rugby sometimes is like watching paint dry, right? I'm not saying every game in the hemisphere.
But interestingly enough, and again, this comes back to the north versus south sort of methodology, is that the way that Japan have beaten Ireland and Scotland. Part of the way is they've held onto the ball. Japan don't kick it, right? They've held onto the ball and they've kept it by quick attack and also and by spreading it wide. Ireland and Exeter Chiefs play a game based on a similar premise of keeping hold of the ball, but they keep hold of the ball by their forwards bashing it up. So you've got the same premise of trying to win the game by holding onto the ball and not letting the opposition score by not having the ball, but the method of execution by the Northern Hemisphere teams is more forward-based bashing, by a Southern Hemisphere coach team in Japan by spreading it wide and finding that space. So we will win that ruck because there aren't enough people there to steal it. So it's interesting that same concept, but the execution, the way you execute it, has been different.
But Paul, Japan played very narrow for large portions of that game.
Yep, they did. That's true.
So in order to ensure, this is what I thought was happening. We were discussing this during the game. In order to ensure that they had sufficient cleaners and they weren't going to be turned over, because that 7 for Scotland was magnificent, right? They played very close, and they not only played close in the first 2-3 channels, very often not even the third one, but often the first receiver would receive the ball and then turn the ball back on the inside, right? For the inside channel here. Even forwards were doing that late in the game, right? I remember seeing that replacement prop who gave such impact off the bench, the one with the bleached hair. He also did that. He was taking the ball and then offloading on the inside, just dropping it off, and they were playing close in. And partly was to ensure that they had sufficient cleaners and they didn't get turned over. And also I think it was so that they could compact the defense before they went wide or before they went to the blind, because they made impact on the blind as well. So that's one thing. That's one but. The other but is Scotland, their third try, and I saw it again, which was a fantastic try. Their third try was created by playing into space and offloading by their tight forwards. It wasn't ball under the jumper, 2 truckers on either side, bash it up and try and beat the advantage line. There were players actually running at space, getting their hands free and offloading the ball to another tight forward who was running to support into a gap to take it again. And then one guy the first person who did it, got the ground and came back to support and received again. It was fantastic. That is a direct legacy of the way New Zealand has played the last 9 years. To see Scotland tight forwards playing into space and offloading the ball and scoring tries, you wouldn't dream of that. We spoke about this other night. You wouldn't dream of that 10, 15 years ago. That is a consequence of New Zealand not only doing it, but winning and winning World Cups. So what they are saying, what they've said to the rest of the world, if you want to beat the All Blacks, you need to score in 5s and 7s. Because we are going to be that good that 2 or 3 times in this 80 minutes, there's going to be an opportunity. And we are going to take that. We are going to score 2 to 3 tries. No matter how good your defense is, you're going to score 2 to 3 tries. That's going to happen. And that's going to be anywhere between, let's say, 12 to 21 points just in tries. And if you're going to keep up with us, you need to be able to score tries. And we back ourselves that if you kick in the corner, we are good enough to stop your maul. So how else are you going to score?
Yep.
Right? And that, let's be honest, that is brilliant for the game of rugby. Because for the casual viewer, he's not a rugby fanatic like we are. when they turn on the game and they see the kind of game that we saw Scotland and Japan, and they deserve huge credit. I mean, Scotland was not the better team, but they were Scotland the brave. They came back tremendously. They didn't lie down and die. And you point out those tackle stats were incredible, right? How many tackles? What was it? Over 150 attempted by Scotland, something like 130, 125 attempted by Japan, right?
Oh, there was a lot of rugby played in that game.
Yes, yep. Which talks about the ball being in play, which talks about less stoppages and reset scrums and all of that stuff that just drains the life and flow out of the game. And that speaks tremendously to the skill and commitment of the players to keep the ball in hand and to attack and to attack and to attack. And that is the thing for the game.
That is good for the game. Another kind of topic that's that happens constantly in international rugby. Batman asks us, DrivingMaul, do you think Wales would be stronger with Ellis Jenkins, Toby Faletau and Rhys Webb? Now the answer is yes. I mean, at least two of those are British and Irish Lions, and any Southern Hemisphere team that has British and Irish Lion players injured is going to be weaker and will be stronger with them. However, can you name a team at this Rugby World Cup that doesn't have injuries and players missing? So yes, Wales will be stronger with those players, but I think that applies to just about every team at this Rugby World Cup. That there are players who aren't there that would make those teams stronger.
Yeah, rugby is a collision sport. It's not a contact sport. Soccer, football is a contact sport. Rugby is a collision sport. And no matter what happens, where there are collisions, at high speed, there are going to be injuries. And one of the reasons why, I'm sorry, I keep on coming back to this, but this is what you should do, right? If you are a fledgling soft drink company, it makes sense to look at Coca-Cola, right? And look at their development. One of the things that the All Blacks have done and recognized years ago is the need to build depth, because you might wind up in the World Cup final fielding your fourth string first five, fly half, right? And he might kick the penalty that wins you a World Cup. Right? Are you building depth across the positions? Do you have coherence of thought across the coaching structures? And what's amazing about the All Blacks is how often somebody comes into the All Black environment and just fits in seamlessly, right? It's not coincidence. It's planning, structures, and that they're working. They know
But it doesn't matter how much planning you have in place. If you look at the All Blacks, they still came into this tournament not knowing really who their six was because of injuries to certain players moving overseas. Not knowing.
That's because the one that should have earmarked 10 years ago was captaining Japan.
Well, okay, that's true. Not knowing who their right wing was, because Julian Sevilla fell out of form, as did Naholo. Naimon Scudder was injured, and suddenly they're looking around. So it doesn't matter how much planning you have in place. There will be one or two. There will be those sort of situations where you have to find someone at the last minute and try and get them in. But I was talking to the players on the pitch after the Northland game the weekend, and one of the things we said was, look, the difference between some of these players who are at the top and who aren't there is opportunity. If you look at and just grasping the opportunity when you get it, look at someone like Big Car Tuanakafi, who's gone from club rugby, not even having a super contract, to being an All Black in 1 year. Sevu Reece, similar, didn't have a super contract at the beginning of the year, was an injury cover. Israel Dag does his knee, has to retire. Suddenly, Sevu Reece at the Rugby World Cup as a first choice All Black. There are good players out there. They just, sometimes it's a matter of just getting the opportunity to show it as well. There's been a few referee appointments.
Deep breaths. Okay, let's hear it.
Well, Nigel Owens is refereeing the All Blacks versus Ireland.
Well,
the All Blacks like Nigel Owens, don't they?
Yeah, well, it doesn't really, to be honest. But of all the games, England and Australia, not England, England and France could be a bit contentious. I don't think South Africa, Wales. I don't think South Africa, Wales. I don't think South Africa, Japan. Wales and Australia played each other. Of all of the games, the game that could get the most tetchy, let's call it that way, is probably New Zealand Ireland. So to put probably your most respected referee on that game is not a bad idea. Barnes must have another one, surely.
Oh yeah, Barnes has got another one. Trying to think which one he's got. I've gone blank now. Yeah, but Barnes has got one.
The South African, the fittest ref in the world. He probably has one as well.
Jaco Piper has got one.
Yep. Is he?
Yep. And the French ref, Garces.
Oh no.
Is it Garces?
Oh no.
I'm going to try and Google, but I'm
oh no.
So I'm just trying to Google who it is. But anyway, look, these are the best refs. The referees that have best decisions as far as rugby is concerned have been chosen. Now, there are some combinations that people aren't happy with. Garces is apparently the
sorry. I know this, you hate this sport. Focus on the race. Let's just be honest. The freeze in it. Garces and Charles Springbok. I mean saying that the better team did not win that game. Absolutely, the All Blacks were the better team lived to win. Right? But Garces was diabolical in that. He was diabolical. There's multiple clips of missing stuff, right? Multiple clips. There clips of All Blacks pulling the scrum down, elbow on the ground from the Peter Steph du Toit flank, pointing, saying, "Look,
okay.
His elbows on the ground."
Right? What I think we'll have to do then is make sure that I don't watch the England-Australia game, because they've got 3 French and Spain as a TMO. So
well, I feel for you because there is it's true. I mean, and the other country was the one who no, been a French ref. Sorry, I'm slacking them all from who referee Argentina France.
I forgot now.
That ref direct influence. That should be on.
Sorry, we've been cutting out home and not search. But anyway, so yes, so look, the referees have been announced. I think the most controversial one is going to be that England-Australia game where we've got 3 French refs and Skeen. That's where we're going to get the most comments about refereeing. The other 3 I'm comfortable with. Barnes.
Who's got the? So that's Wales and Australia.
No, England, Australia.
England, Australia is Garces. Wales is playing France.
Wales is playing France. So they'll have Barnes, I think. No, sorry, yeah, they'll have Wayne Barnes.
Barnes. And who is Piper doing? Jaco Piper.
So Jaco Piper must be doing. So Jaco Piper will be doing Wales, France, and Barnes will be doing South Africa, Japan, because Piper can't do that one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just this is where I just shake my head, and I at times I think the IRB could not organise a piss up in a brewery, right? How Garces, after that opening weekend performance, which they publicly criticised all their referees, right? How he then gets a quarterfinal is if if he's one of the top 4 refs in the world, then rugby refereeing is in trouble. I cannot believe that they're not better options to do that. But anyway, I don't know what the reasoning was, and of course you cannot delve into it. You don't get any feedback. You don't, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, moving.
Sabazi, Jeff Pensacre. Okay, cool. So one of the things, so we kicked people off and asked at the beginning about players, didn't we? Mm. So John, you kick us off then with your player, whilst I scroll back and find people's favourite players.
Well, a couple of standouts. Beauden Barrett has been brilliant.
He hasn't been mentioned. Cheslin Colby has, but the question marks about his fitness now.
Colby has been quicksilver, eye-opening. His ability to beat players. We've seen, when I say Beauden Barrett, I think he's not mentioned because we almost become used to his greatness. This is the unfortunate thing that familiarity breeds contempt, right? But he's been extraordinary, and you can see in the coverage and comments by ex-players recognize the difference that he makes. I've been very impressed with Michael Leach.
Michael Leach has had some love in the chat as well about the lead brought to Japan.
And player, brilliant, right? The 2 wings for Japan have been excellent.
They haven't got a mention, but yes, they are excellent. Apparently, one of them is at the age of 27 is retiring from rugby to finish his doctor's degree.
Well, he might be offered a lot of money to carry on playing, right? He might be offered a lot of money to carry on playing.
But talking of wingers, Josh Adams for Wales, I think he got. Did he get a hat trick the other day? So yes. Yeah.
But he was also, let's be fair, he was also treated like speed bump, right? So he finished well. He did what was supposed to be. A couple of times just moaned on this, right? So there's that side. I'm not saying a bad player, and there's a lot of. You just ask Reece Hodge what it's like to try and tackle Fijians in full flight, right? So he's not the only one. When we think of France, they've had some good performances. Gail Fiku was very good in some of the games.
But we've and there's been some good performances, but again, they've been stuttering, haven't they?
Yes.
As well.
Hasn't been like standout. In England, I haven't watched all their games, but it was good. But when I think of a player that just has simply been absolutely lights out, brilliant, where you kind of go, can I believe what I'm seeing? For me, it's been
Yep.
Right. The Fijian wing has been the athlete of the tournament, the impact player of the tournament, the most wonderful player to watch. He has been, and it's a travesty that he's not going to get to play in any further rounds. But I don't think anybody has a him. For me, in his position, it's been like daylight. It's been him, then daylight, and then all the other wings, right? And not that the other wings are good. That's the point. I'm not saying Colby hasn't been good. The Japanese wings have been excellent. Right? But what he's been able to do is been able to approach. Every time he got the ball in that game against Wales, it seemed as the first, you put your money down, the first defender was not going to, right?
Yep.
So that's my vote.
Yep, no, he's good. Other players for Japan, Hori, the hooker, he has been he's been very good. And I was this actually we had as far as Barnets go, as far as haircuts go, this was a relatively calm Rugby World Cup, but his braids done into pigtails is just so hilarious for Hori. It looks like kind of a bit like kind of a schoolgirl kind of pigtails. for the sorry,
long stocking.
Fippy long stockings. Yes, absolutely. So actually, yeah, that's a good one, folks in the chat. Which have been the worst haircuts you've seen from players? There was a bleached Japanese prop as well. That meant he stood out, which is quite cool. I quite enjoyed that one.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah. So any bad haircuts, let me know. We should actually just cover off on some of the themes we've had over the last 3 weeks. So we had the theme obviously of refereeing and red cards that came and went. Hopefully it's dying down now. We've kind of had the theme then of the upsets, because they happen in week 2 with your Japan over Ireland and Uruguay over Fiji. So we had some upsets in there, and then the sort of the last week obviously was all about the weather and postponed games, and lots of people throwing their toys out the pram, going that basically the integrity of this tournament had been destroyed by all the red cards and by all the and by cancelled games and things. But to my mind, I think the rugby has been absolutely enjoyable, and it's been a fantastic tournament. So yeah, I think there are a bunch of people looking for things to be negative about, but those have been the main kind of theme news stories in there.
I think let's separate out some stuff. There are clear signs that rugby, the game, is healthy. The gap between the top teams and the lower teams has closed. 1995, beaten by New Zealand, 145-3. 12 years ago, 10 years ago, Scotland put 108 on Japan. Japan not only beat Scotland and Ireland, not only did they make it through the quarterfinal, they finished top of that group, and they were the best team in that group. It wasn't a desperate intercept try that separated them from Ireland. They were the better team on the day, right? That gap is closed. It's sad to see how the Ireland teams are not doing what I think they could do if they had the right support. You continue to see the fact that in the last 30 minutes of the game they fall away, which speaks about preparation time, fitness, nutrition, all these kind of things that the highly professional and very well-financed teams have on their side. That's not good. But generally, you can see that even teams like Namibia, who got pumped by 45 points, right? Those margins were bigger a few years ago. They were 80 points, right? So they look better at times, even in the games where they got pumped. They had periods where they looked good. I mean, there was periods in the first half where Namibia were playing well against New Zealand. It's not something you would have said about some of these smaller teams, right? Uruguay performing the way that they did, outstanding. So there's signs of rude health in the game and the growth of the game, especially in the East with Japan's rise, and hopefully that's going to grow the game, right? So it's important, I think, to separate out the fact that the best teams have gone through, right? As tough as that is for Scotland, and I love the way Scotland plays. For those of you who are watching who are Scotland fans, you can be very proud of what they have embraced in the way that they play. You can be very proud of the coaching style. You can be proud of their courage. But the fact of the matter can't be changed, that unless their selection is really poor and brilliant players were left at home, they just did not have the top-level athletes that some of these other teams. They didn't have the top level, as many top athletes as Japan did. And that's simply what separated them from everybody else, right? So the best teams have gone through. That's what you want to see. Mm-hmm. Teams playing really good rugby have gone through, right? So Japan has gone through embracing a playing into space game, speed, unloading in contact, playing into space, scoring in 5s and 7s. These are all good things, right? What we should do is separate them out of the two things. One is the correct emphasis by World Rugby on protecting the players. It's easy to forget that 10 years ago when they started emphasizing that you couldn't take somebody out when their feet were off the ground, everybody went, this is going to destroy the game. Now it's taken as given. If you flip somebody up in the air while you take the feet out from under them, whether that's in a line out or when they're jumping for the ball, you're in deep trouble. People used to be smashed like that. Now it's a given. It's easy to that's going to get you a card. It's easy to forget that in 2011 we had huge controversy with a red card in the semi-final to the captain of Wales for a tip tackle.
Yeah,
going to destroy the
and all this stuff has gone away because basically the players train differently, so they just don't. And the same thing will happen with the head high tackles. The training will change, and the instincts of the players will change, and it'll all be fine. Yep.
And the thing to say to all the old school people like myself, and you played the game and whatever, is just calm down and realize that these red cards are not protecting the player who just got tackled. It's already done. The deed is done, right? You can't go back and reverse that contact. What those are for is to protect the rest of the players in that game and all the other players around the world that are playing in the next week, next month, the next year. When tackling, remember that red card. They gave a red card in the World Cup semi-final. I better not tip a player over onto his head, lift his feet up and drop him. To make sure when I come into a tackle, I'm targeting down, right? Because we now know concussions are potentially deadly, right? CTE is a problem. And I worry for players like George North, what their future is going to be. I worry for players like Kieran Reid, what their future is going to be. Sam Cane. We've already seen players in New Zealand like, was it Ben Afiaki, who had to call time on an All Black career at age 26.
Look, it's definitely the right thing, and yeah, I've got no problems with it. Just the media controversy has just gone too far.
So the thing is, you separate out what's good, what we've seen that's good. You separate out great emphasis on protecting the head and the neck, because otherwise you have mothers watching it, seeing it happen, and it doesn't get a red card, and they go, I don't want my son to this game. It's good. So we take those out. Then separate is the ineptness of the rugby, right? They have made some really poor decisions. They made some poor organizational decisions. They have not been consistent in how they've implemented some of the red card system, right? So players like, for instance, Reese Hodge getting 3 weeks, whereas somebody else like the two Italians also getting 3 weeks. Makes no sense, right? Reese Hodge was brave but clumsy. The other two...
Well, okay, and you've also got... Bundiaki's got 3 weeks as well, where you could argue that he was, basically didn't. It was last minute because they were both. He was going for the ball, and then it wasn't really a lined up tackle. So in some ways, it's been consistent that it's been 3 weeks, but for anyone who touches the head, no matter why. But yeah, I do agree that those the French ones is a bit is confusing because it was much more deliberate. I'm going to disagree on the look. There's always human nature involved, so there will always be an element of variability and not total consistency. So I disagree with you on how badly World Rugby have done in that kind of state, in that kind of side of things.
It's taking two examples. I mean, the one that two now, and I know I've said this and you told me I must calm down about this, but the one that continues to irk me is how Joe Moody who hits a player from behind with a drop shoulder in the back of the head and neck.
And that's in the ruck area, and the ruck area will be the next area that people are getting lots of red cards for. At the moment, it's tackles, right? That'll be the next battle. The next Rugby World Cup, we'll see lots of ruck red cards. That's my prediction.
Severe was in the tackle, and he was coming in to help tackle. So he was coming into a tackle with the shoulder down. So it's scheduling their reserve venues in case they had typhoons for only 20 kilometers away, which makes no sense. It's scheduling some of their final games to be refereed, not by questionable referees, but not protecting their referees by giving them to ones where there's no potential clash of interest. It's just a litany of just really basic, simple, common sense decisions that they've mucked up, right? And that's where we, as fans, go, come on, guys, surely rugby can be run better than this.
Okay. And again, I don't think that having any sort of contingency for 40 games during the pool stage was going to be logistic, was viable, and they should have said there was no contingency for those ones personally.
The point is, if it's not viable, say there's nothing.
Yeah.
Don't say that you've got one. We've got a contingency game that's in case we have bad weather, and then we're going to play it in a stadium that's 22 kilometers away if we have bad weather.
But we've has World Rugby come out and said that was the stadium, or is that a hearsay thing that we've heard again from?
You as the Mr. Maul, right? Please, will you do some investigative journalism and find out for us?
I'll see what I can do. But yeah, so I know there's, and I understand, and I can see there's a lot of people on your side of the fence that are very upset with the administration side of things. I personally would give them more slack, but that's just that comes down to opinion and why we have more than one person on here.
To those of you who are watching and are upset, right? My advice to you would be get involved, right? We are upset because we love this game, right? And there is something special about this game. Whether you've played it or whether you haven't and you've come to it as a spectator, it is a special, special game, right? I had a friend, I'll tell the story very quickly because we're running out of time, a friend of mine who is a pastor in the United States who went to visit West Point Academy, which is the college for the U.S. Army officer candidates, right? And they do a degree there, they exit as officers into the U.S. Army, and they have to serve a minimum amount of time in the Army. Very famous West Point Academy. And while they were touring, the guy that was taking them around the campus took them to the sports fields and said, here, you'll see the cadets are playing a game, which is the preferred game of choice at West Point, even though they do have a team that plays high-level college football. So this is the game of choice at West Point because we believe this most resembles combat, this game, because the enemy is constantly coming at you, and it most resembles the ability to make decisions under pressure, teamwork, subverting the self for the good of the whole, and leadership under constant pressure and under fire and rugby, right? So rugby is a special, and we love it. If you are upset with the situation of the game, get involved. Get down to your local club and volunteer. And you say, how does that affect? Well, rugby still has an amateur ethos in many, many countries. And although in the UK and in France, many of these clubs are owned by wealthy owners, you can still influence how well rugby is run at that club. And you can still be a force for good in that club. And who knows, maybe you'll be elected onto the board of that club. And maybe as you prove yourself and you serve, maybe you'll then be elected onto the board of rugby in your country. It can happen. But if you're upset about what's happening, get involved.
Yep. The moving on to some of the hair cutting we asked for feedback on. Clearly, people are actually that used to. If you're in New Zealand, you get used to mullet. So yeah, Jack Mullet, Goodhue, Keisler's mullet from Uruguay. Yeah, you kind of see so many of them as soon as you get outside of Auckland in New Zealand. So yeah, I get that. But I can't remember what Peter L's haircut was like for Japan. So, but anyway.
Oh, the one wing, I must admit, there's two candidates for the toilet brush haircut, right, award. And that is Oddly Severe and the right wing for Japan. They both look like a toilet brush. They both need somebody to sit down with them and say, son, lad, mate,
okay.
The emperor is naked.
Okay, we're one very quickly. Ollie Brown, Japan was selected to host the after 2011 World Cup. Why host it in typhoon season? Because this is the slot in the world calendar that they say is where the Rugby World Cup has to be held. You can't move it. This is where it is, and it's just a matter of that for Japan, and that's what the weather's like there. The World Rugby World Cup is always in this slot. It's the only space for it in the global calendar. It can't be moved just because of the weather conditions in the country. I'm afraid. Sorry.
Okay. So, Ollie, I'm going to disagree with Paul here because your question is like the little kid saying the emperor is naked and asking the question. It is like somebody saying, has Jack Goodhue got no mates that will sit him down? Buddy, in 20 years' time, when they show footage of you playing, you're going to bury your head in your hands and say, why did nobody tell me, right? You are asking the right questions. It's not that they cannot move it, right? Of course it could be moved, but it would require a World Rugby season. Yep. The problem is not that it is impossible. Of course it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, but it was not possible in this time frame for this year.
Yeah, but they could have if they had instituted a World Rugby season, if they were working together and they had a formulated plan for the good of the game, then they could have done it. So your question, I believe, is totally valid, right? They could have done something if they were working together, but unfortunately, they don't want to. There's not the desire to do that. And that's a whole other discussion that, Paul, you've promised to have afterwards.
Yes, exactly. So
going forward.
But no, under the current way that things are set up as far as calendars work, it couldn't be moved for Japan. You can't have it at this window for England and previously for New Zealand and then change it for Japan. This is the window it's in, and the countries bid to host it in this window. They don't. It's not. Yeah, that's how it's.
Yes. But I'm saying previous World Cups have been held in June or July. They were held in June and July in South Africa in '95. It's possible. It's just you've got to have a desire to do it, right? That's as simple as it. It's not impossible. It's just that's the only slot they would give them, and that's a decision thing, right? So again, it comes back to he's asking the right question. He's asking absolutely the right question. It comes back to...
But our final serious topic, because I say this was... I was just quick.
It's not Japan's fault. It's not Japan's fault at all.
No. It's World Rugby. Not World Rugby as an institution, but as in all the countries.
Yes.
That they wouldn't let them do it. But so the last serious question. For teams that had cancelled games, is that an advantage in that they're more rested going to the quarterfinals, or a disadvantage in that they go in undercooked?
I have to believe that on the balance, it's an advantage, right? Because they're in full rugby cycle now. They've been training for months. They're not going to have more cohesion because they had one more game. They are more likely to have incurred an injury. And those who are a bit banged up, that have some niggles that are battling to heal, or some bruises that are swelling is battling to come down, and they keep coming up every time they play, they have more time to recover. So on the balance of probabilities, I would say it benefits those who had games cancelled on this last weekend.
On the whole, I agree. I think there are certain situations where teams would have liked a bit more game time. I think All Blacks versus Italy, I think All Blacks would have liked more game time for Retallick and for Goodhue to get more game time in, because coming back from injury. So I think they would have actually liked to have played on Saturday. Whereas your England-France, the last thing they needed was to beat each other up just before the quarterfinals. So they'll be glad they didn't get the game. But I think New Zealand would actually have liked to have played.
But then again, you don't know the condition of the other 29 players in that squad. So it might have been a good idea for those two, for Retallick and Goodhue. But on the balance of the rest of the squad, it might be exactly what they needed.
Yep. And who else got cancelled? Italy. Obviously, Namibia and Canada would have loved to have played, and that for me is the saddest cancellation. Is that Namibia and Canada didn't get to play, and that could have been Namibia's first ever Rugby World Cup win. Yes,
and Namibia have come on. They've improved. Their scrum half against New Zealand, excellent. It's a good performance, good on them. And a lot of credit needs to go to Canada for their response in taking time out to help the community and get involved in some of the work that they've done to recover from the typhoon. So they had that huge
I think actually Canada and Namibia, I think both teams came out together.
Oh, brilliant. That's rugby. That's the rugby community. That's the ethos. One of the things that makes rugby very special.
Yep.
And huge credit to the two of them. No? They didn't throw their hands in the air. We were robbed of the opportunity. Because this is huge. I mean, as we all think, it's great. Big thing to play for England at a World Cup and New Zealand and South Africa, whatever it may be. But for these players in these small countries, it's maybe even bigger, right? It's like the point of their career.
Absolutely. For these two, and I say, and in fact, Namibia never won a game. This was their Rugby World Cup final for these two teams. Mm-hmm. They weren't going to beat Italy. They definitely weren't going to beat South Africa or New Zealand. So this was their Rugby World Cup final. The other point, I put a tweet out saying that it would be really cool if they had if they tried to quickly arrange a midweek game for Namibia versus Canada as a charity fundraiser.
That would be good.
Relief, not as a rearranged game, because they can't do that. It's unfair on the other teams. But I think it would have been good for them, to do it that way instead. Would have been cool.
I think that would have been terrific. And I think that looking at the response of the crowds, I think Japanese fans have been fantastic.
Yeah.
I think they would have got huge support for that.
Yep, absolutely. So, I put that out as a tweet today, but I think that would have been cool. I don't think they have done that. Sorry?
That's a very good idea, Paul.
Hey, once a year, I do get them.
Sorry to sound so surprised.
One of the things we've talked about during this show has been the closing of the gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2. I have done a bunch of analysis of the last 3 Rugby World Cups, looking at the scores between all the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams, seeing what the average points difference is, the maximum score, the minimum score, all of that kind of stuff. So I'll be putting a video out for my supporters tomorrow about that. So have a look out for that. And you can become a supporter of DrivingMaul at drivingmaul.com/Patreon. Link down. Patreon.com/DrivingMaul. Link down below in the comments. John, thank you so much for being for having a chat tonight.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for coming around to watch and bringing in the beer.
Yep, I'll be around this weekend as well for 4 games. We'll be doing post match reactions as soon as the interviews are over. Not as soon as whistles finished.
Some what would we call it? Post match counselling in case that England game doesn't go well.
So I've got my jersey ready. I'll be in white. So thank you, everybody.
And you.
Sorry.
Your tighty whities.
My tighty whities. And also, just to let people know, tomorrow night will be the All Blacks edition, where I'll be letting you know by Stat Attack how many Wheat Bix that Kieran Reid eats, and Sam Kane and Matt Todd. So you can have a guess as to who eats the most Wheat Bix. I've got a few of them here, and that will be our game. Our game tomorrow night.
Crucial information. Crucial information.
We'll be talking about, yes, number of Wheat Bix that players read. And we're not sponsored, by the way. But Wheat Bix, if you'd fancy giving me some free breakfast cereals, much appreciated. And with that, good night, everybody.
Good night.